popular devices from big names in the market. The watchdog used a calibrated treadmill to compare different trackers, logging the number of steps and distance travelled. It's warning some simply can't be relied upon. Months of training will come to fruition this time tomorrow when thousands of amateur and professional athletes line up for the London Marathon. In the men's wheelchair race, all eyes will be on David Weir, who's looking for a record 9th course victory. His teammate, John Boy Smith, is an upcoming wheelchair racer whose life was changed in a split second as a teenager. Kate Gray has been to meet him at his training base at Richmond Park.
John Boy Smith is one of Britain's rising stars on the wheelchair racing circuit. But he never set out to be. His life changed at the age of 16 in a tragic case of mistaken identity.
I stumbled upon the wrong farm at the wrong time, mistaken for a poacher. I was accused of poaching and everything like that. Farmer fired a warning shot at me instead of asking questions, are you poaching, was you here before, or whichever. Fired a warning shot, me and my friends run back to our car. The gun that the farmer shot me with was a rifle. He shot through the back of the car, through the seat and into my spine. That's the less gory short story.
And that was it?
That was it. Instantly total paralysis.
Before his injury, he was a keen amateur boxer in his traveller community. That was clearly no longer an option. So during his 5 months of rehab at Stoke Mandeville Hospital, he had to come to terms with his new way of life.
My mum was pushing me around the hospital in a wheelchair. I was thinking, one, I'm not going to let her do that because that's going to get her down, and two, I'm a 16-year-old boy, I need some dignity. That sort of like inspired me to be better, be stronger physically and mentally. And yeah, just all snowballed from there, really.
Over time, John Boy tried out a number of different sports and eventually found his calling as a marathon racer.
It's going to be silver and bronze for England.
Success soon followed, winning silver at last year's Commonwealth Games.
The best moment in his wheelchair racing career so far.
But ultimately, it's not about the medals for John Boy. He wants to be a role model in his community and prove that anything is possible.
You can have the worst news in the world. You've lost your use to your legs, you can't box anymore, you can't have a normal job. I just wanted to show there's life after disability. There's life after tragedy. I'm just a local lad from Kent, and it just so happens I'm very good at wheelchair racing.
Before we take a look at the weather, let's just take a look at some pictures coming to us from Strasbourg, where new yellow vest protests are emerging. In the last 15 minutes, there have been scenes of flares, tear gas and scuffles in the streets with a strong police presence. We will, of course, keep you updated with further developments. OK, Thomas has the weather for us. And any good news coming up, Thomas?
Yeah, I think you asked me whether there's any good news. Excuse me, coming up. Yeah, there is actually. The weather's not looking bad at all early next week, but the weather today really is not very pleasant at all. We've got the strong winds in the wake of Storm Hannah, which was barreling across the UK overnight. Ireland really got a pasting down here in the southwest of Ireland, but for us, the worst of the winds were around the Welsh coasts and across the hills. This is what it looks like this afternoon. Excuse me, and the showers will continue with that wind for a time this evening, but the winds will be easing as this sort of the centre of this low. You can just about make out a rotation here as that moves out into the North Sea. Temperatures further north, around 4 degrees underneath the clearing skies for most of us, probably 6, 7 to 8. And then tomorrow, a much better day. The winds will be lighter, there'll be more sunshine around, not clear blue skies everywhere. There'll be some clouds around for sure, and maybe the odd shower too, but you really will notice a difference. Temperatures some 5 degrees high compared to today.
India is going to the polls with nearly 900 million voters expected to turn up at the ballots for the world's largest democratic exercise. So what can we expect from this election?
We'll be travelling to every corner of this vast country, speaking to voters. Chat about everything from business to lifestyle. And look at how recent challenges may affect the results.
For full coverage of the 2019 India elections, join us online and here at BBC News.
Hello, this is BBC News with me, Laquesta Burek. The headlines. 15 bodies, including those of 6 children, are found by Sri Lankan security forces after a gun battle with Islamist militants. The authorities say the militants set off explosives as troops surrounded a house in the east of the country. Nearly 100 Labour MPs and MEPs, including shadow ministers, are calling on Jeremy Corbyn to back another referendum on any Brexit deal. Northern Ireland politicians are being urged to unite to deliver on power sharing talks by the priest who received an ovation at Lyra McKee's funeral. And England's top doctor is warning cosmetic clinics that they may be contributing to a mental health epidemic. Professor Stephen Powers says practitioners should have training to help them protect vulnerable clients from quick fixes such as Botox. Well, now on BBC News, with toxic water in the southern Iraqi city of Basra causing tens of thousands of people to fall ill last summer, Martin Patience investigates Iraq's environmental catastrophe.
Last summer, a city fell sick. The streets of Basra erupted in anger. The cause? The city's water supply. A toxic cocktail that's poisoning the people.
This is cancer. If we don't fix this, this cancer will spread.
We're on a journey from the mountains of northern Iraq to the southern marshes to investigate the country's environmental catastrophe and understand how the city of Basra has become the country's drain, the centre of the crisis, where all the filth ends up. A little over 15 years ago, none of this existed. The marshes had been drained, but in 2003, they were brought back to life. The threats now are very different. They're pollution, a lack of water, as well as climate change. If people keep dumping raw sewage, poisons, toxins...
Of course it is catastrophic.
Our journey to trace the roots of this crisis begins in the mountains of northern Iraq, a lunar landscape that brings to life the rest of the country. The rainfall from here feeds Iraq's 2 great rivers, the Tigris and the Euphrates. They gave rise to Mesopotamia, the land between the rivers, home to one of the earliest civilizations, now modern-day Iraq. The water up here is at its most pristine. Untouched, you can drink it straight from the streams. But almost as soon as it runs off the mountains, it becomes contaminated. This is the rubbish dump for Sulaymaniyah, one of the biggest cities in northern Iraq, and everything gets dumped here. This is just one of the most extraordinary things I've ever seen. It's a mountain of rubbish and it looks like part of the landscape, and that's the point. All of this is leaching into the river. The problem may start here, but the consequences of it are really being felt downstream. Our guide Nabil grew up here. He once worked as a forklift driver overseas, but the beauty of Iraq brought him home. Now he's an environmental activist dedicated to cleaning up the country's waterways. And he says Iraqis need to wake up to the nightmare they've created.
This is cancer. If we don't fix this, this cancer will spread, obviously. You can see this is sliding down and going toward our life, which is our drinking water. So it's going to affect our foods, our children, our fish and creatures, insects, bugs, everything. So the cancer will spread. So we need to kill this cancer, basically.
If I was to fall into that, Would I survive?
No, you will be lucky if you survive. This is the deadliest liquid. This is pure litter, and we've been dumping oils for the last 10 years. And of course, you know, the garbage gone to the oils and the litter, plus sulfur, asphalt, heavy metals, and everything's in this pool.
Pure poison.
Yes, this is pure contamination, and it's pure poison.
But it's not just the quality of Iraq's water, it's the quantity too. Dozens of dams have been built across the region. Iraq depends on its neighbours for 70% of its supply, but now it only gets half the water it once did. The Dukan Lake, a massive reservoir, contains Iraq's most precious resource. But on a breathtaking boat ride, Nabil shows me how it's being squandered.
What's this place called?
Tangi Bukuzawa, Bride and Groom's Gorge. So this is a very famous place. You know, people, they come here just for visit, selfie, and they go back.
Oh, this is a selfie spot?
Yes, yes, yes.
Because it's so beautiful.
Yeah.
But then you see this, and it just makes you very sad.
Yeah, this is Suleimani. This is what we drink. This is our drinking water, basically. And people, they don't see, you can, it took us like 10 minutes, you know, speedboat to come here, and people, they don't see this place. They don't see, they think, oh, you know, we have a Dukan Lake reservoir, it's beautiful, clean. But wait a minute, you know, if you go deep to the dead end, this is a dead end, and you will see the reality.
Well, we're finally free from the sludge.
Not 100%, we have some more.
There's more up ahead, sadly. The beating heart of the country is the capital, Baghdad. It's the next stop on our journey. For almost 40 years, Iraq has been consumed by war. It's the only thing it's planned for. But Baghdad is rapidly growing. Its population is expected to swell to 10 million people. This is just lovely, wandering through one of the most famous streets in Baghdad. And to think a decade ago, this would have simply been unimaginable. The security situation was so out of control, but it's a sign, I suppose, of how much this country's changed since then. The city's infrastructure was built decades ago, and it can no longer cope. So Baghdad dumps all of its raw sewage into the river, flushing the problem downstream. But nature is no longer so forgiving. How high did this river used to be? Is the level the same as it was in the past?
No, it's not the same level. You can see the edge over there. It used to be that high.
So it'd be covering those reeds way above it?
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
And now there's just less water?
Yes, much less, and it never gets that high again.
What does this river mean to you?
I think this river is the main source of life, because, you know, civilizations started in here. One of the biggest civilizations of humans started here. So this is something meaningful for me.
It's very precious.
It's precious.
Well, this is the historic city of Baghdad, home to more than 8 million people. And the lifeblood of this city is the Tigris River. But as you move down it, the more polluted the Tigris becomes. And it's almost as if Iraq is poisoning itself. It's nearly 500 kilometers from Baghdad to the city of Basra. It's home to the country's main port and once fertile farmland. But now, it's hard to find fresh water here. And the rising salinity of the water is having a crippling effect on the city. This was Basra last summer, when the city erupted in anger. Protesters were furious about corruption, unemployment, and poisoned water. The authorities cracked down hard. More than a dozen demonstrators were killed. Basra was a broken city. This wounded protester cursed the city's leaders as the scum of the earth. A city once known as the Venice of the East had become a vision of hell. Its canals a symbol of corruption and dysfunction. The sweltering summer heat turning this into a toxic stew. Tens of thousands were rushed to the city's hospitals, suffering from stomach cramps and serious diarrhea. Doctors and nurses were overwhelmed. The city had never seen a health crisis on this scale. It was Basra's slums that were worst hit. People here live in toxic filth and have limited access to clean drinking water. I meet Rima, a housewife. She shows me the family's water source.
Where's the water?
Rima's 10 children all fell sick. Several of them spent 2 weeks in hospital.
عليهم الحكومة. هسه الحكومة شربها هالماء المالح، على مسؤول يشربه ما يشربه، تغسل ما يغسل به. يخاف على دي جراثيم يصير به. الفقير يغسل به ويشرب منه. ونوبات ما عنده يطبخ منه. هاي حالة الفقير، شو يسوي؟ عنده عرف لا.
Was the whole neighborhood sick?
منطقتنا كلها سالته مرضت، كلها تمرضت، مو بس احنا. هاي بصرتها كلها. مو بس احنا. يعني روح شوف المستشفيات هم ما يدرون كل زين. هم يجيهم ماي بطالة ويجيهم أكل مسلفن ما يأكلون هذا شرب الفقير.
Basra should be a wealthy city. It sits on top of most of Iraq's oil. It's also where the country's two great rivers converge.
Well, this is the Shatt al Arab, and the big problem last summer is there simply wasn't enough water coming down the river. And that's incredibly important to flush the system, because what you have is the river fighting the sea. The sea is pushing up in the opposite direction and it faces resistance from the river. Well, last summer it was the sea that won the battle and the water became incredibly salty, and that's a real problem because this is the main water source for the city of Basra.
And if that wasn't bad enough, Basra dumps all its raw sewage into the river. It was sitting here, stagnating in the summer heat. I went to meet Jamal Al-Adali, who has responsibility for the country's water resources.
We have made a lot of tests. There are some traces of heavy metals which should not be in the water, but I don't think it is the cause. It's the real cause. It is the mixture of, sewage water and Shatt al Arab and seawater and the scarcity of pure water. All this together make this water not suitable for human consumption.
If people keep dumping raw sewage, poisons, toxins,
Of course, it is catastrophic. The augmentation and the increase of population, of course, the increase of use of water and the increase of sewage. This will destroy everything.
It'll destroy everything?
Of course. This will destroy the quality of water they need to drink and to supply everything they need.
The government says it's investing in water treatment projects to prevent a repeat of last summer's crisis. But Iraq can't do it on its own. And that's because most of its water comes from neighbouring countries, including Iran.
Well, what's really interesting is we've been meeting a lot of officials and they've been incredibly open and informative, but as soon as we mention the word Iran, they suddenly clam up. They don't want to go there, they don't want to talk about that issue, and I think that's a sign of how much Iranian influence there is in the city. But several of those officials told us that Iran is the source of some of the pollution that goes into this river behind me.
Last summer was a glimpse of how a state can shatter when it fails to provide even the most basic of services. The governor's office in Basra was set on fire by protesters. This is a city plagued by corruption and Shia militias. And one of the protest leaders says that's killing Basra.
السبب الحقيقي للتظاهرات انه بعد 15 سنة من التغيير لا زالت البصرة ترزح تحت نير الظلم والخراب والنهب المنظم، ولا زالت مدينة خربة، مدينة تعوم على بحر من النفط، لكن أكثر من 60% من شبابها يعانون من البطالة، نقص هائل بالخدمات، تدمير كامل للبنى التحتية، لا توجد أي خدمات حقيقية تقدمها الحكومة المحلية لأهالي البصرة. البصريين خاصة في الصيف يعانون الأمرين من الحر ومن نقص الكهرباء ومن المياه السامة التي تصل إلى البيوت.
ماذا تريد من الحكومة؟ What do you want from the government?
ما يريده البصريون إن حياة حقيقية، يستمتعون بأموالهم التي تذهب بجيوب الفاسدين، لذلك أعتقد أنه في الصيف القادم قد نكون مقبلين على أوضاع متأزمة جديدة، لأن الحكومة لحد الآن لم تقدم ما هو مطلوب منها.
Iraq sits on fabulous wealth, but Basra hasn't seen any of it, and nor have the Arab marshes, a World Heritage Site larger than many Arab countries.
And we're off, we're just leaving the main town in the marshes and we're heading out into the central waters. I'm excited. I'm very, very excited.
It's a place of shimmering beauty that stretches for as far as the eye can see. The miracle in the desert, only made possible by the country's two great rivers which flood this plain. It's little wonder then that some believe this was the original Garden of Eden.
Well, this road was built in the 1990s by Saddam Hussein when there was an uprising in the marshes, and he crushed that rebellion. And in order to punish the people here, he drained all of the marshes.
The people may have returned, but life remains tough here. Families depend upon the marshes, but there have been 3 droughts in a decade. And last year, the wetlands shrunk to a quarter of their original size. There simply wasn't enough fresh water. And for the buffalo, that was a killer. And if they can't survive, then neither can the community. These animals provide milk, meat, and money. Karim Al-Bahar has been rearing buffalo all his life, but last summer he lost 20 of his animals.
مشينا الحدود حملنا بسيارات ومشينا والنوب رجعنا تعذينا كلش تعذينا حلال صار بيموت.
Without water, what's the future here? Is there a future?
والله لا ظل بقى الماء هذا احنا زينين ولا جات لنا الماء ما يخرب وضعنا والحلال يتدهور ويروح واحنا عيشتنا عليه والعلاف هاي غاليه معناته ما
Life is fragile here, and what happens to these wetlands will have consequences for the rest of Iraq. Jassim has dedicated his life to the marshes. He's the guardian of these waters.
لدي هواجس، لدي خوف من أن تجف الأهوار كليا، ويذهب هذا المنظر الجميل وهذه الثقافة المحلية، ويذهب مربون الجاموس إلى أقطاع مختلف. كلنا نخاف من ذلك اليوم الذي يأتي ولا نجد فيه مياه كافية في دجلة والفرات لإغمار هذه الأهوار. لكن إرادة الأهواريين مهمة، سيصبحون في مناطق أخرى وسيتنقلون يهاجرون إلى مدن قصية كما حدث في تسعينات القرن الماضي. ربما يذهبون إلى بحيرات الفلوجة، إلى الثرثار، إلى أماكن أخرى. لكن هذا الهاجس هو هاجس مظلم حقيقة ويرعبني أحيانا، حتى أنني أجد أحيانا في أحلامي كوابيس تتحدث عن الجفاف وفقدان هذه البقعة الجميلة.
Well, a little over 15 years ago, none of this existed. The marshes had been drained, but in 2003, they were brought back to life. The threats now are very different. They're pollution, a lack of water, as well as climate change.
The marshes have survived for millennia, but they may not last much longer. Like Iraq itself, they're facing their gravest threat yet. Last summer was a warning to the country that the rivers that created these extraordinary wetlands are under assault. And unless Iraq gets to grips with its water crisis, millions could be forced to move, and a way of life could be wiped out forever.
Well, it's been a very blustery morning across some parts of Western Britain thanks to Storm Hannah, which is now slowly blowing itself out. And the rest of the day will see the storm fading away and those winds easing. This is what it looked like on the satellite image in the last 12 hours or so. The worst of the winds actually went across southwestern Ireland, so we're just feeling the sort of back end of this weather system. But it's quite a swirl on the cloud here. You can see quite a few showers being carried in by a very strong northwesterly wind, the gale force winds that are affecting parts of northern Wales right now around the Irish Sea. Some really strong winds still this afternoon, even inland, gusting 40 to 50 miles an hour, buffeting those trees, and some pretty hefty showers as well. Now, temperatures in some areas are actually only 5 or 6 degrees right now, maybe recovering a little bit once the rain clears away, but it's not feeling great out there, I have to say, today. But there is some sunshine around too, so we're not all underneath the cloud and the rain. Anyway, through this evening and overnight, some of the skies will clear and it will be quite nippy, particularly across northern areas, 4 degrees for Belfast and for Newcastle. And then tomorrow we've got the London Marathon, and we start off fairly fresh with temperatures of around 8 degrees or so, probably warming up to possibly 13 by the afternoon. So not a particularly warm one, or not too warm for the runners. Cooler is always a little bit better for this sort of thing, obviously. If you're a runner, you will know. Now, the forecast for tomorrow afternoon for most of us looking decent enough. By 4 o'clock, possibly peaking around 14 or 15 degrees, and some sunshine around as well. How about the week ahead? It looks like it's going to be a dry start. We've got a couple of good days on the way early next week, both Monday and Tuesday. Not necessarily sunny. There might be some cloud around, particularly across some central and southern areas on Monday. Might be overcast, for example, in London or Reading, but there'll be sun around too. Looks like Edinburgh's the winner there, with highs getting up to around 18 degrees Celsius. That's it for me. Bye-bye.
This is BBC News. I'm Luquessa Burak. The headlines at 3. 15 bodies